I am thrilled to introduce our Congressman to the podium to have the last word. And so I will let him in, but I'll remind everyone that Business Days is next year. Every year we do the same thing. We come together and join to talk about these issues. And it will be, again, remembering that the state law requires it to be the first Monday. The session starts the first Monday after the first day of the year. It will be the 2nd and 3rd of January. So we'll look forward to everyone bright-eyed and bushy-tailed at Business Days next year. So that being said, Congressman Zinke is here to give the last word. He is our sole representative in the U.S. House. He's a fifth-generation Montana. He's a former state senator who I had the pleasure of working with. And a 23-year Navy SEAL veteran. He also became the first Navy SEAL to be elected to the House. I can tell you from knowing Congressman Zinke and working with him, we are very lucky to have an American first, a Montanan tied to that, and he puts those interests first. So please give him a round of applause as he makes his way to the podium.
Well, first of all, I'm honored to be your congressman, and I'm probably more influential as a freshman congressman than I should be. And a lot of the reason is because of you. When I talk to my colleagues and I say Montana is the same size as Washington, D.C. to Chicago plus 2 miles. I represent more citizens than any other congressman in the second largest state, district, second only to Alaska. But Montana has a special place. And when I ask my colleagues for help on issues, there is an idea about Montana that is unique. Now, we all live here, so we understand what Montana really is, but the rest of Congress looks at Montana as hardworking, beautiful skies, independent, red, white, and blue, cattle across the sea, and we should leverage that because Montana is truly unique. Congress, you may be surprised. The things that have surprised me a year sitting in the office is actually there's a lot of talent in Congress, more than I thought. And I've had the privilege of leading some unbelievably talented teams. So Congress has the talent. Congress just haven't learned to work together as a team. We haven't learned higher purpose away from politics. Now we're getting there. We have a new speaker. I think Speaker Ryan has already has started in a good way. 20% of Congress are freshmen just like me. 60% of the House has been in the House for 3 terms or less. So when you hear of the establishment in Congress, here is the establishment's getting their way. I don't know what that is, because when you have a speaker that's in his 40s, 60% of Congress has been there 3 terms or less. And if you can tell me one Republican that can tell another Republican what to do, I want to meet him or her. Other than my wife is probably true. But I want to not talk about the negative, because we hear about the negative all the time. Let's talk about what's positive in our country. First, the vision of the Congress between now and the end. I think Congress should focus on 3 things. One is defend and support the Constitution. If we as a people, if we as Montanans can't agree on the Constitution, then I don't think there's a lot we can agree on. And if you haven't read the Constitution lately, go back and read it. It is a magnificent, artful compromise. I say that last word because it was a compromise. As it turns out, that compromise, I think, best articulates the values and strengths of this country. It's about the individual. your rights. Nowhere in the Constitution does it talk about the collective. It talks about our rights as an individual. Secondly, I think we need to promote economic freedom and prosperity. And there is a difference between freedom and prosperity. You can have short-term prosperity through government subsidies and dependence. But the strength of this country has always been our ability to innovate, think out of the box, have the freedom, if you're a banker, to loan your money to your client, the freedom to sell a car. And if that person can't afford it, then you know maybe you can do the finance to help them in the car. But business is about having the latitude and freedom, free from an excessive regulatory environment that is stifling America. And lastly, I think we need national security to include our borders. Now, I've been critical of this president, but not everything this president says is wrong. But I think his view on Iran on the State of the Union address was wrong. Iran is a threat. It is a clear and present threat. That the things we face with ISIS and Al-Qaeda and all you hear, we have to secure our borders, and we have to make sure we're strong. Our enemies are not going to go away, and when we embolden them by not engaging, and when our enemy doesn't trust us and our allies, or our enemy doesn't fear us and our allies don't trust us, it creates vacuums. And what we're seeing overseas are vacuums being created in the South China Sea as China, who is not our enemy, I will say our competitor, as China begins to make islands in the middle of the South China Sea, and we do not stand. Instead, we give them 12 miles berth. We don't fly over them, we give them 12 miles. We then appear that we embolden China. When a vacuum is created in the Ukraine, when we give Russian latitude to invade countries and don't honor our treaty obligations, it has a cost here. Russia is putting flags in the North Pole. And finally, in the Middle East, which has a lot of a world attention. When America goes too far away from, I will say, John F. Kennedy, some of you are old enough to remember his inaugural address, that he would pay any price, and we as a nation would bear any burden in the defense of liberty. That was a rallying call for all nations to know that we would be a reliable ally in time of need. But when we walk away from our obligations and form vacuums, we embolden countries to do evil things. We embolden non-nation states like ISIS and Al-Qaeda to do very, very evil things. You're not going to reform ISIS. You're not going to reform the Taliban. Their purpose in life is to destroy us and destroy you and everything that you believe in. And we have to recognize that. There is an alternative for America to stand, for America to be a great ally. Because when we don't, and vacuums are created in the Middle East, you have 3.5 million people in Syria that have left Syria. If we don't stand, you'll see the Islamic terrorism organizations expand all the way across the Middle East, all the way into Africa, and we'll have 20 or 30 million people, greater than what was World War II, leaving because there is no future. They are not safe. This is the consequence of not engaging. So we do need a strong military. We also need our border control. I think we do face a triple threat. Our southern border, primarily, there's 250,000 illegal immigrants that come across our border every day or every year. In the last 3 months, 40,000 families have come across the border. It's not that we don't want immigration. It's that we need to know who's coming across our border. Because if children can walk across our border, I will guarantee you ISIS and those that want to do us harm can come across too. Our northern border, it remains an issue, but it's not even to the close to the scale. About 2,500 come across our border on the northern side. Yes, we need to get better. Yes, we can use technology. No, a fence won't work. But we do need to monitor it. Secondly, the refugees. You've heard me express a bill on refugees. It is not that America doesn't want to accept or should not accept refugees. America has always shown our softer side of humanity and been generous. Is that we cannot accept people that we don't know who they are or what intent they have. And we need to vet them. I don't think it's too much to ask if someone's coming in as a refugee, we should know their purpose. But when the administration says, well, they're vetted because we looked at databases, well, just because the folder is empty doesn't mean we know who they are. And I've spent a lot of my time over the Middle East, and there is no database. And when people leave their homes for terrorism or other purposes, you can't exactly interview their neighbor. So we need some surety that the refugees we're bringing in are here for the right purpose. And lastly, travel visas. You'd be surprised. There's 5,000 European Union-held passport holders. 5,000 that have fought with ISIS. There's over 500 U.S. citizens that have U.S. passports that have also fought alongside ISIS. And if you're from one of these 38 countries, you can just go online and get an expedited visa and take a United flight and be here. So the omnibus bill at least did that. It stopped the visa program and refitted it where it was appropriate, because we need to know who's here. The good thing is, in my year in Congress, I haven't seen one problem that is not within the power of the U.S., given leadership and given resolve to fix. Not one. As bad as it is, sometimes, most of what's occurring is we are doing it to ourselves. We either haven't paid attention or think that there's a captain steering the ship in our best interest, and we haven't paid attention. A lot of it is our fault as a people. It's our country. Every one of us are stakeholders, and we all need to get involved. We need to hold our elected officials accountable. So when they say something that's not true, we need to hold them accountable. There's no passes. The stakes are too high. The next president of the United States, he or she, the reason why I'm optimistic is the next president of the United States will inherit the strongest military in the history of mankind. There is no nation on earth, there is no alliance, there is no combination. You can add China, Russia, and the European Union. None of them can do what the United States Navy can do every day, despite the two small vessels that should have had a towing line, should be in the right uniform, and should not have communication. That's a seamanship problem. We'll address that a little later. The next president, and I'm a former geologist, the next president is going to inherit a country that has more energy potential than anybody. And energy is all above. As a former geologist, it was inconceivable the amount of natural gas, the amount of crude oil, and the amount of coal we have as a nation. And yes, all the above is a great energy plan, but you can't ignore coal. And God loves coal. And I tell you, God loves those who love coal. But in order to keep our economy moving, is that we have to have manufacturing jobs. And we have to have an economy that grows. And you can't grow an economy unless you have an energy cost that is low. We can't pay, nor should we pay, the same labor wage as what China can pay their people. In Montana alone, it takes about $18 an hour to make a living here. And we know it. Most parents both work. It's hard to make a living in Montana. It always has, and it's likely always will be. Wages are low. There's only one way we can manufacture in this country, and that's have energy costs that are low. And we have everything at our fingertips to do it. Lastly, the next president will inherit America. To say that Americans don't work hard, to say that Americans don't want education or don't value traditional Montana American values is nonsense. Americans are the hardest working people on the face of the planet. We are more productive than any other country. If you look at the burden placed on excessive regulation, I talked earlier about the Mercatus Institute. It's a think tank in D.C., and it's bipartisan. They looked at regulation in 1 year and the effect on business. Now, you're in business. You feel it. If you're in the banking business, try to make a loan. If you're in the energy business, try to dig a little coal. If you're in a franchise business, try to pay health care. We feel it. So what's the burden if you add it up? They took a year, 2012. So it's been a little ways away, but not so far distant. It's before ACA was fully implemented. It was before Dodd-Frank was fully implemented. But they added the cost on America. And that cost came out to be about $3.6 trillion. That's equivalent to our budget as a country in 1 year. Now, that's not Russia or China doing damage to our economy. That's ourselves. The reason why I'm an optimist is there is no country in the world that can sustain a $3.6 trillion hit year after year and yet grow. Only one. Only America. Imagine what we can do as a country if you're lifted that burden. If that 500-pound anchor isn't attached to you, the American economy can run. Now, yes, regulation is important. Corporations don't monitor themselves. But excessive regulation strikes exactly the heart of what America does best, and that's innovate and think out of the box. So look, I'm an optimist. This year is going to be an interesting year. The presidential candidates, whether you like Trump or not, I think the era of political correctness is over. And I think that's a good thing. In Montana, we've never experienced really political correctness because we've always been able to talk. And we've always been able to be critical of each other, compliment when you're right, criticize when you're wrong, but we can have the discussion because we're Montanans. And as your congressman, you're not going to like everything I do. And that's okay. But we should talk about it. And we should talk about why. And we should talk about a better future and how to get there and why it's important to have good education. And it isn't just about graduation rates. It's about better education. It's about innovation in the classroom. I graduated high school in Whitefish in 1980. The world is much, much different today. Greg ran a tech company. What our children face today is a different world. I'll give you an example. Programmable VCR. As I look across the audience, there's fear in many of you. You remember, programmable VCR. It's programmable. It's going to be a pain. Fortunately, I have my grandchild who's going to come up and help me with it, right? Now, you say programmable VCR to a millennial. There's a look of disbelief. Because, number one, everything's programmable, and they don't know what a VCR is. So that's the difference between my generation and the next generation to come. And our responsibility is to help the next generation be great. Help the next generation have the same opportunity that we did. And yes, we grew up in Montana and hunting and fishing and clean air and clean water, okay jobs, sometimes okay plus. We want to make sure our kids have the same opportunity. And we can. But we can't do it unless we have common purpose. For those that know me, I'm not hard red, I'm not hard blue, I'm red, white, and blue for a reason. That's Montana. Is that yes, we can debate different parts of politics, and we should. But we cannot debate higher purpose. And higher purpose is creating a better Montana, a better country. And returning to when you wake up in the morning, tomorrow's going to be a better day. And it should. And it can. Because we have everything in our power to be the country we should and can. So upcoming elections, my advice is get a big bag of popcorn and get a good seat. But thank you for allowing me to serve you. I know who I work for, and I work for you. And it's a great honor to work for you. And please maintain your sense of humor and your sense of love to this country. God bless.
Well, we feel equally blessed to have you represent us, Congressman Zinke. We're happy to make a contribution on your behalf to the Paul Maxwell Memorial Fund. It was created to recognize Brigadier General Maxwell's contributions to the military in Montana. So. And with that, thanks everyone for coming to Business Days at the Capitol, or the Great Northern 2016. And please stay involved with the Montana Chamber and moving business forward in Montana. Thank you all.